They said, "Be glad we still let you visit." Let that sink in for a moment. Let you visit. The house I'd scrimped and saved for, the home where I'd raised them, the walls that held every Christmas morning, every scraped knee I'd bandaged, every tear I'd dried. My name is Patricia Whitmore, and I'm 72 years old. For the past 3 years, I've been living in a modest apartment in Portland, Oregon, while my own home, the 4-bedroom Craftsman on Maple Street that my late husband Daniel and I bought in 1978, has been occupied by my daughter Veronica and her husband Keith. But before I tell you how I took back what was mine, I need you to understand how I lost it in the first place. Hello everyone, please tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. I find such comfort knowing I'm not alone in this, that somewhere out there, someone understands what it's like when the children you sacrificed everything for turn into strangers who see you as nothing more than an inconvenience. This story begins 5 years ago, though the seeds were planted long before that. Daniel died in March of 2020, 67 years old, gone from a massive heart attack while working in our garden. We'd been married for 46 years. He was my whole world, and when he left, the silence in our home became unbearable. Veronica was our only child. We'd wanted more, but after several miscarriages, we poured all our love into her. Dance lessons, piano lessons, private school, college tuition. We gave her everything. Daniel worked double shifts at the shipping yard for 15 years to afford her education. I took night jobs as a seamstress while working days at the library. She graduated debt-free, married Keith, a corporate attorney, and they built what looked like a perfect life in Seattle. 2 kids, Brandon and Ashley, who I adored from the moment they were born. After Daniel died, the loneliness was crushing. The house felt too big, too quiet, too full of ghosts. I'd find myself setting 2 plates at dinner, forgetting for just a moment that I was alone. Veronica called me one evening in late 2020. "Mom, Keith and I have been talking. We're worried about you rattling around in that big house all by yourself. What if you fell? What if something happened and no one knew for days?" Her concern felt genuine. It warmed something that had gone cold inside me. "We have a proposal," she continued. "Keith's firm is opening a new office in Portland. We'd move back, live in the house with you, help with everything. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or yard work or being alone, and Brandon and Ashley would get to spend real time with their grandmother." I should have seen it then. I should have questioned why she didn't suggest I move in with them, why my house was suddenly the solution. But I was grieving and lonely and desperate to feel needed again. "We'd cover all the utilities and expenses," Keith added when he got on the phone. "You'd just live there, enjoy your grandchildren. We'd take care of everything else." It sounded like a blessing. It was a trap. They moved in during January of 2021. At first, everything seemed wonderful. Brandon, then 14, would sit with me in the evenings, and I'd tell him stories about his grandfather. Ashley, 12, would help me bake cookies using Daniel's mother's recipes. Veronica seemed genuinely happy to be home, and Keith was polite, even charming. But small things began to shift. "Mom, we need to use the master bedroom," Veronica said about 2 weeks after they arrived. "Keith has chronic back problems, and your bed has that adjustable base. You understand, don't you?" We moved the guest room furniture around. It's actually quite cozy. The guest room was half the size, facing the loud street instead of the quiet garden Daniel had tended for decades. But I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family required compromise. Then came the living room. "Patricia, the kids need space for their gaming setup," Keith explained one Saturday morning. "We're moving some of your furniture to the basement, just temporarily until we figure out a better arrangement." My grandmother's rocking chair went down those stairs. The console table Daniel had built by hand. Our wedding photo in its silver frame, replaced by a massive television I never wanted. "It's their home too, Mom," Veronica said when I protested weakly. "We all have to adjust." But it wasn't their home. It was mine. They were supposed to be living with me, not erasing me. The kitchen was next. My cooking schedule, maintained for 50 years, was disrupted. Keith preferred dinner at 8 instead of 6. Veronica put my cookware in storage and replaced it with her modern sets. My labeled shelves, organized exactly how I needed them, were rearranged without asking. "We're trying to establish routines for the kids," she explained. "Consistency is important." What about my routines? What about my consistency? I started feeling like a visitor in my own home. I'd wake up to find Keith in Daniel's home office, which he'd converted into his workspace without discussion. He'd installed a lock on the door. "Confidential client files," he said with that attorney smile. "I'm sure you understand." I'd come downstairs to find my favorite chair occupied, the television blaring shows I didn't choose, conversations stopping when I entered the room. "Mom, we're having a family discussion," Veronica would say, emphasizing the word in a way that somehow excluded me. 6 months in, I realized I was eating dinner alone, more often than not. They'd feed the kids earlier, then Keith and Veronica would have date nights in the dining room I was no longer invited to join. "You mentioned you preferred eating earlier." "Anyway," Veronica said when I brought it up, "we thought we were helping." The bills started coming to me again around month 8. Despite Keith's promise to cover utilities, I found myself paying for cable packages I didn't want, internet speeds I didn't need, and a lawn service that replaced the gentle gardener Daniel had used for years with an expensive company that scalped everything he'd planted. "Oh, we thought you'd want to contribute," Keith said. "You do still own the house, after all." That phrase, "still own the house," stuck with me like a splinter. The real heartbreak came with the photographs. I'd spent weeks after Daniel died creating memory albums. 46 years of marriage documented in careful detail. Our honeymoon in San Francisco, Veronica's birth, first days of school, Daniel teaching her to ride a bike, family vacations to Crater Lake, his retirement party. I kept them on the shelf in what used to be our bedroom, now Veronica and Keith's room. One afternoon, I needed my blood pressure medication, which I'd left on the nightstand during their move. I knocked, got no answer, and entered. The albums were gone. I found Veronica in the kitchen. "Honey, where are the photo albums, the ones from the bedroom shelf?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, those. They were taking up so much space. I packed them in boxes in the attic." "The attic?" My voice cracked. "Those are my memories. My entire life with your father." "Mom, you're being dramatic. They're safe. You can look at them any time you want." But I couldn't. The attic was accessed through a pull-down ladder I could no longer climb safely. She knew that. Keith knew that. Those albums might as well have been on the moon. "Could you bring them down for me?" I asked. "Sure, when I have time. I'm swamped this week." She never had time. Not that week. Not the next. Not the month after that. My wedding photo disappeared from the hallway. "Ashley needed the frame for a school project," Veronica explained. The photo itself was nowhere to be found. Daniel's favorite armchair, the leather one he'd saved for months to buy, went to Goodwill. It was falling apart, Mom, an eyesore. It wasn't falling apart. It was broken in, comfortable, smelling faintly of his aftershave. I'd been sitting in it every morning with my coffee, feeling close to him. "You should have asked me," I whispered. "We're trying to modernize the space," Keith interjected. "You'll adjust." His mother's china cabinet, the one she'd carried from Vermont in 1945, was moved to the garage. Temporary, they promised. It stayed there until water damage from a roof leak ruined half the pieces inside. "These things happen," Keith said with a shrug when I discovered it. "That's what insurance is for." Except he never filed a claim. And those pieces, irreplaceable family heirlooms, ended up in the trash. I began to see what was happening. They weren't just taking space. They were erasing Daniel. They were erasing our history. They were transforming my home into theirs, piece by piece, memory by memory. I tried talking to Veronica one evening when Keith was working late. "Honey, I'm feeling a bit displaced," I began carefully. "This is still my home, and I'd appreciate being consulted before things are changed or removed." Her face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Mom, we moved our entire lives here to take care of you. We gave up our home in Seattle. Keith took a pay cut. The least you can do is be flexible about furniture. I never asked you to give anything up, I said quietly. No, you just guilted us with your loneliness, she snapped back. That hurt more than anything else she could have said. My friends noticed my absence before I did. Carol Jennings, my best friend for 30 years, called one Tuesday morning. Pat, we missed you at book club again. That's 3 months in a row. Are you okay? Was I? I couldn't remember the last time I'd left the house for something I wanted to do. Veronica needed me to watch the kids, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. The excuse had become automatic. Every Tuesday for 3 months? Carol's skepticism was clear. Patricia, what's really going on? I wanted to tell her everything, how I'd become invisible in my own home, how my family had book club nights and movie nights and dinner parties I wasn't invited to, how I'd asked to join their game night once, and Veronica had said, Mom, you wouldn't enjoy it. We play adult games. Adult games. As if I hadn't been an adult longer than she'd been alive. But saying it out loud felt like admitting I'd made a terrible mistake, like confirming I'd lost control of my own life. I'm just tired lately, I lied. I'll make the next one. I didn't. Because when I mentioned it to Veronica, she scheduled a dentist appointment for Brandon at the exact same time and asked me to drive him. Keith and I both have important meetings, she explained. You don't mind, do you? What could I say? They were doing me a favor by living with me, or so I'd been told repeatedly. My other outings disappeared one by one. My weekly volunteer shift at the library, where I'd worked for 23 years before retiring, conflicted with Ashley's soccer games I was expected to attend. Never mind that Veronica and Keith were both there, my presence was somehow essential. My monthly lunch with the ladies from church was too far to drive at your age, Mom. What if something happened? I was 70 years old then, perfectly capable of driving 15 minutes to a restaurant. But Keith had started making comments about my reaction time, my vision, my confusion about which pedal is which. A joke that wasn't funny because it was completely fabricated. The walls were closing in, but so slowly I barely noticed until I was already trapped. Then came the incident with my car. I'd owned a 2015 Toyota Camry, reliable and paid off. One morning, I woke to find it missing from the driveway. Where's my car? I asked, trying to keep the panic from my voice. Oh, Keith took it to the shop, Veronica said casually. The check engine light was on. It wasn't. I'd driven it just fine the day before. The car came back 2 days later with a list of necessary repairs, totaling $3,800. Keith had already authorized the work. You're lucky we caught these issues, he said. The mechanic said you were driving a death trap. I'd had the car serviced 3 months earlier. Everything had been fine, but I paid the bill because what else could I do? 2 weeks later, Keith suggested I use their second car instead. We hardly drive it, and this way you don't have to worry about maintenance. My car disappeared again, this time permanently. We sold it, Veronica admitted months later. You weren't using it anyway. The money from the sale never reached me. The shift from uncomfortable to unbearable happened over Thanksgiving 2023. I'd spent 3 days preparing Daniel's traditional feast, turkey with my mother's herb stuffing, cranberry sauce made from scratch, sweet potato casserole with the pecan topping, Daniel's favorite pumpkin pie. The kitchen smelled like every happy holiday we'd ever celebrated. Veronica's in-laws, Keith's parents, Robert and Diane, were visiting from California. I'd met them twice before at Brandon's graduation and Ashley's confirmation. Pleasant enough people, though Diane had a way of looking at me that made me feel inspected. I set the dining room table with our good china, the pieces that had survived the garage, water damage, candles, fresh flowers from the garden, Daniel's mother's linen napkins I'd preserved for special occasions. Everyone gathered at 4 o'clock. I'd been cooking since dawn. Dinner's ready, I announced, carrying the turkey to the table with pride. That's when Keith stood at the head of the table, Daniel's place, the spot he'd occupied for 40 years of holiday meals, and raised his glass. Before we eat, I want to thank Veronica for opening her home to family this year. Her home, not our home, not my home, her home. I stood there, oven mitts still on my hands, and watched everyone toast my daughter for hosting Thanksgiving in my house, serving food I'd cooked. "Mom, sit down," Veronica said, gesturing to a chair at the far end of the table. Not beside her, not in my usual spot next to where Daniel used to sit. At the end, squeezed between Brandon and the wall. Robert started carving the turkey. Daniel's job, my job after he passed, apparently now his job. Diane complimented Veronica on the beautiful table setting. "Thank you," Veronica said, not mentioning I'd done it. The dinner conversation flowed around me like I was a piece of furniture. Keith discussed his latest case. Robert talked about their yacht club. Diane mentioned their upcoming cruise to Alaska. "You should join us," she said to Veronica and Keith. "We'd love to have the whole family." I wasn't included in the whole family, apparently. Veronica's eyes lit up. "That sounds wonderful, but we couldn't leave Mom alone for 2 weeks." "Oh, I'm sure she'd manage," Diane said, waving a hand dismissively. "She's lived alone before." "Actually, I've been thinking," Keith said, setting down his fork. "Patricia, maybe it's time we discuss some changes." The table went quiet. Everyone looked at me. "Changes?" I managed. "You're getting older. This house is a lot for you to handle. Veronica and I have been carrying most of the responsibility. Financially, physically. It's becoming burdensome. Burdensome. I was a burden. We think it might be time to consider other living arrangements for you," Keith continued, his attorney voice smooth and practiced. "Somewhere more appropriate for your needs. There are some excellent senior communities in the area." My hands began to tremble. "You want me to move out of my house?" "It's not really about want," Veronica added quickly. "It's about what's practical, what's best for everyone. If you're feeling what I felt at that moment, that crushing betrayal, that suffocating helplessness, please subscribe to this channel. Your support means everything, and it helps me share these stories that so many of us live through in silence." "Best for everyone?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Or best for you?" Keith's expression hardened. "I think we should discuss this privately, Veronica. Your mother is getting emotional." Getting emotional, as if I didn't have every right to emotions when being told to leave my own home. "No," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "If you're going to discuss my future, you'll do it with me present." Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Diane suddenly became very interested in her sweet potatoes. The kids had already disappeared to the living room, whether by design or luck. "Mom, we've sacrificed a lot to be here," Veronica said. "Keith's career took a hit with the transfer. We gave up our social circle, our community. We did this for you." "I never asked you to," I said again, louder this time. "You offered. You said you wanted to help, to be close. Not once did anyone mention that I'd be expected to pay for that help by surrendering my home." "Surrendering is a strong word," Keith interjected. "We're talking about a natural transition. You'd sell the house, split the proceeds, use your share for a nice apartment or assisted living." "I don't need assisted living. I'm 72, not 92. "But you will eventually," Veronica pressed. "And property values are excellent right now. If we wait too long, you might not get as much. And then where would that leave you?" The logic was sound on the surface, but underneath I heard what they were really saying. "We want our inheritance now. We're tired of waiting for you to die. This house isn't for sale," I said quietly. Keith exchanged a look with Veronica that I couldn't quite read. "Patricia, be reasonable. You can't maintain this place alone." "I'm not alone. You're here, remember? Taking care of everything as you promised." "That arrangement has become untenable," Keith said, the lawyer fully present now. "The financial strain, the time commitment, it's affecting our quality of life." "Then move out," I said simply. "Go back to Seattle. Find your own place in Portland. I'll manage fine on my own." The silence that followed was arctic. "After everything we've done?" Veronica's voice rose. After we uprooted our lives, moved here to take care of you, and this is the thanks we get? What exactly have you done?" The question came out sharper than I intended, but 3 years of swallowed grievances were pushing their way up. "You've taken my bedroom, my furniture, my car. You've made me feel like a guest in my own home. You've isolated me from my friends and erased every trace of your father. What part of that was taking care of me?" "We've kept you safe," Veronica shouted. "We've kept you fed and housed and in my house." The words exploded from me. Fed with my Social Security and pension, housed in the home my husband and I worked our entire lives to pay for. Robert and Diane excused themselves so quickly they nearly knocked over their chairs. The front door closed moments later. Keith stood slowly, deliberately. "I think we all need to cool down. But Patricia, this conversation isn't over. We'll be making some decisions in the coming weeks. For everyone's sake, I hope you'll be cooperative." It was a threat wrapped in politeness. The week after Thanksgiving, the temperature in the house dropped to match the weather outside. Veronica stopped speaking to me except when necessary. Keith acted as if I didn't exist. The kids, sensing the tension, avoided me entirely. I spent most of my time in the small guest room that had become my prison, researching senior living facilities online because I wanted to understand what they were proposing. The costs were staggering. $3,000 to $5,000 monthly for basic apartments, more for any care services. My Social Security and pension totaled $4,200 a month. After a senior apartment, I'd have almost nothing left. Meanwhile, my house, the house I owned free and clear, was worth approximately $700,000 in Portland's market. Sell it, split the proceeds. They'd get $350,000. I'd get $350,000, pour it into senior living, and burn through it in maybe 6 years. Then what? Then I'd be broke and dependent, exactly where they wanted me. I was thinking about this, staring at my laptop screen, when I heard voices from downstairs. Keith's office door was open, unusual since he kept it locked, and he was on a conference call. "The property is in her name solely," he was saying. "That's the complication. But given her age and increasing confusion, we might have grounds for conservatorship." My blood turned to ice. "She's shown poor judgment with finances," he continued, and I nearly laughed at the audacity. I'd never had poor judgment with finances. I'd saved enough to own this house outright and maintain a comfortable retirement. I've documented several instances. We'd need a medical evaluation, but I'm confident we could demonstrate diminished capacity. Conservatorship. They were planning to have me declared incompetent. I'd read about this. Family members taking legal control of an elderly person's finances and decisions. It happened all the time, often with good intentions. But sometimes, like this, it was financial abuse dressed up as concern. They'd control my assets. They could sell my house without my consent. They could decide where I lived, how my money was spent. I'd become a legal child, powerless in every way that mattered. I grabbed my purse and coat and left the house as quietly as possible. Carol answered her door within seconds of my knock. "Pat, I was just thinking about, good Lord, what's wrong?" Everything spilled out. 3 years of humiliation, isolation, and manipulation. The Thanksgiving ultimatum, the conservatorship plan I'd overheard. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "They're trying to steal your house," she said flatly when I finished. "They're my family," I protested weakly, though I no longer believed it myself. "No, honey, family doesn't do this. Thieves do this. Sophisticated, patient thieves, but thieves nonetheless." She made coffee and we sat at her kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless conversations over the years. "What are my options?" I asked. "Well, you could wait for them to file for conservatorship and fight it, but that's expensive, stressful, and not guaranteed. Or," she paused, considering, "or you could beat them at their own game." "How? You own the house. You can evict them. You can sell it yourself. You can take back control before they take it from you." Could I? After everything, did I have the strength? Carol reached across the table and gripped my hand. Patricia Whitmore, I've known you for 30 years. You raised a daughter alone while Daniel worked double shifts. You beat breast cancer in your 50s. You nursed your husband through his final heart attack, staying strong until the very end. You are not powerless. Her words sparked something I thought had died. I didn't go back to the house that night. Carol insisted I stay with her, and I was grateful. For the first time in 3 years, I slept soundly. The next morning, I called Margaret Chen, an attorney I'd known from my library volunteer work. She'd helped me with Daniel's estate and had always been direct and trustworthy. Patricia, tell me everything, she said when I arrived at her office. I did. 3 years compressed into 30 minutes of documentation I'd started keeping. Emails, texts, the bills I'd paid despite Keith's promises, the repair invoice for my car, everything I could gather. Margaret's jaw tightened as she reviewed the materials. This is financial elder abuse, textbook case. Can they really get conservatorship? They can try, but you're clearly competent, managing your own affairs, no cognitive issues. Any judge would see through it, especially with this documentation of their financial manipulation. She tapped the stack of papers. But the process would be hell for you. Expensive, invasive, stressful. Better to make it unnecessary. How? You evict them. Formal, legal eviction. They're month-to-month occupants in your home. You never signed a lease with them, right? Right. They just moved in. Then you give them 60 days' notice to vacate. Oregon law is clear. You don't need cause. It's your property. My hands trembled. They'll fight it. They'll make it ugly. Probably. But the law is on your side. And Patricia, there's something else you should consider. She leaned forward. Sell the house. Not to split with them. They have no legal claim to it. Sell it for yourself. Take the money, buy something smaller that's truly yours, and live the rest of your life free from their manipulation. But Veronica always expected what? To inherit your house? Patricia, inheritance is a gift, not a right. And gifts go to people who've earned them through love and respect, not manipulation and abuse. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Think about it, Margaret said. In the meantime, let me draft the eviction notice. 60 days from when we serve it. They're out. What you do with the house after that is entirely up to you. I thought about it for approximately 10 seconds. Draft it, I said. The eviction notice was served by a process server on December 15th, 2023. I wasn't there when it happened. Margaret advised I stay with Carol for safety and sanity. But Carol's son, Tom, who lived nearby, reported the aftermath. Apparently, Keith answered the door, read the notice, and turned a shade of purple. Tom described as stroke-inducing. Veronica's scream could be heard from the street. My phone exploded with calls and texts I didn't answer. Margaret had been clear. No contact, everything goes through me now, don't give them any ammunition. The voicemail started angry and grew desperate. How could you do this to us? We gave up everything for you. You're making a huge mistake. Mom, please, let's talk about this. You're not thinking clearly. That last one almost broke me. But then I remembered Keith's voice on that conference call, calmly discussing my diminished capacity, and my resolve hardened. They had 60 days. I started making other plans. In January, while Veronica and Keith scrambled to find new housing, I listed the house with a real estate agent Margaret recommended. The market was competitive. We had 3 offers within a week, all above asking price. I accepted the highest, $745,000. Veronica found out through the lockbox on the front door. She called me directly, bypassing Margaret's instructions. Mom, please, can we just talk, face to face? Against my better judgment and Margaret's advice, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. She looked terrible. Thinner, dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed. Part of me, the mother part that never fully dies, wanted to comfort her. Mom, I'm sorry. She started crying immediately. We handled everything wrong. Keith pushed too hard, too fast. I should have protected you instead of going along with him. Yes, you should have. Please don't sell the house. Please. We'll move out. We'll give you space. We'll do whatever you want. Just don't sell it. That house is my inheritance. It's supposed to be Brandon and Ashley's future. It's my house, Veronica. Not your inheritance. Mine. But Dad would want... Don't. My voice cracked. Don't you dare tell me what your father would want. Daniel would be horrified by what you've done. He worked himself to exhaustion to give you opportunities. And this is how you honor him? By trying to steal from his widow? We weren't stealing. We were trying to help manage. You were trying to manage me out of my own life. I slammed my coffee cup down, sloshing liquid onto the table. You took my bedroom, my furniture, my car, my memories of your father. You isolated me from my friends. You made me feel like a burden in my own home. And then you planned to have me declared incompetent so you could take everything legally. Her face went white. You heard that? I heard it. Keith discussing conservatorship like I was already dead. Mom, that wasn't... He was just exploring options. To steal my autonomy and my assets. Don't pretty it up, Veronica. She was sobbing now, mascara running down her face. What do you want from me? What can I do to fix this? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. The house sells in March. You have until February 14th to be out. Where will we go? We can't afford Portland rent and save for a down payment. You're a lawyer's wife with a trust fund from Keith's parents. You'll figure it out. That trust is for the kids' college. Then I guess you'll have to make the same sacrifices your father and I made. Get a second job. Cut expenses. Be creative. I stood to leave. You wanted to be adults making adult decisions about my life. Now make some about your own. Mom, please. One more thing. I turned back. The furniture you put in storage. Daniel's chair you donated. My wedding photo you lost. I want detailed accounting of every single item. Margaret will be in touch about restitution. You're suing us? I'm getting back what you stole. There's a difference. I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. The house closed on March 22nd, 2024. $745,000 minus agent fees and closing costs left me with just over $700,000, more money than I'd ever imagined having at once. Veronica, Keith, and the kids moved to a rental house in Beaverton in mid-February. They took only what was legally theirs. Everything they'd stored or donated without permission was itemized by Margaret, and I received a settlement check for $18,000 covering the value of Daniel's furniture, my grandmother's damaged china, and other items. It wasn't about the money. It was about acknowledgement, about them admitting, legally and financially, that they'd taken what wasn't theirs. I bought a beautiful 2-bedroom cottage in Ashland, Oregon. Smaller, manageable, with a garden I could tend, and a front porch perfect for morning coffee. It cost $300,000, leaving me $400,000 invested conservatively for the future. For the first time in years, I felt secure, safe, free. Carol helped me move in, along with several friends from book club I'd reconnected with. We hung Daniel's portrait in the living room prominently. I set up my grandmother's rocking chair, bought back from the secondhand store for $200, by the window. Every photograph I'd rescued from that attic, every memory they'd tried to bury, found a place in my new home. Brandon called me once, briefly. "Grandma, I don't understand why you did this." "Maybe someday you will," I told him. "When you're older and someone you love treats you like an inconvenience instead of a person." Ashley sent a letter, which I haven't opened yet. Maybe I will someday, maybe I won't. Veronica and Keith? Silence. Complete silence. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm 73 now. My days are full again. Volunteering at the Ashland Library, attending theater performances, hosting book club at my cottage, tending my garden where I've planted roses in Daniel's memory. I think about What I lost sometimes. The relationship with my daughter, the grandchildren I adore but can't have in my life, the family I thought I'd have in my old age. But then I think about what I gained, my dignity, my autonomy, my peace. There's no perfect ending here. I didn't reconcile with Veronica in some tearful reunion. I didn't get my family back. Some betrayals cut too deep for simple forgiveness. What I got was something perhaps more valuable. I got myself back. To anyone watching this who's in a similar situation, being made to feel small in their own life, being manipulated by family members who see inheritance as entitlement, please know this: you deserve respect, you deserve dignity, and you deserve to live your remaining years on your terms, not theirs. Inheritance is earned through love, not demanded through manipulation. I'm Patricia Whitmore. I'm 73 years old, and I sold the house they thought they'd inherit. And I've never slept better. Thank you for listening to my story.